The path to the Super Bowl is through Philly. We clawed, we scratched, and we fought to get here. We pushed through the pain and the pressure for this moment, for this hour.
Stafford's got to have it. His throw is incomplete, not close. Philadelphia to the championship game.
And now, the hunt continues.
Jalen Hurts, touchdown!
Now is when we reach deep inside and unlock what should not be unleashed.
15, 10, goodbye! Another one!
This is where we become the beast, the threat, the terror.
He's in! They've got him!
This is who we are. This is why we're here. This is how we hunt.
We welcome you to the Eagles pregame show brought to you by SeatGeek. Welcome to the NFC Championship Game in Philadelphia for the third time in the last 8 years. Goldstein and Sam Heine, the 16-3 Philadelphia Eagles hosting the 14-5 Washington Commanders at Lincoln Financial Field Stadium. How are we doing?
Oh man, doing great. Like you said, second time in the last 3 years, the Eagles have been in the NFC Championship Game. We can't take these moments for granted, even though it seems like the Eagles do get here a lot with, obviously the division opponent now that we're playing for the NFC Championship. I think if all of us were to predict how these playoffs would have gone in the beginning of the playoffs, we'd all think that we'd be playing in Detroit right now, but we get to host the Washington Commanders at home with a chance to go to the Super Bowl on the line. I mean, I couldn't be more excited to get this game kicked off. I feel like I haven't been able to sleep for the last week. I'm just so nervous, excited, just anxious, every word you can think of, just ready for this game to get kicked off.
Yeah. The Commanders. Never did I think we'd be playing. My internet just cut up. By the Washington Commanders in the playoffs. But, well, here we are. We're hosting Washington in the NFC Championship Game in 2025. And starting the week, was a little confident. I'm slowly getting more nervous and nervous as the week went on. Now I'm just filled with so much confidence, so much nerve. How are you feeling going into this game?
Yeah, I think I was the opposite of you. I think watching that game last week against the Lions, I was a little nervous seeing the Washington Commanders winning and how well they played there. But as the week has kind of gone on and as I've looked into this matchup a little bit more and thought back to the two games when we played them earlier in the season, and just the fact that, I think the Eagles are the best team remaining. I've gotten a lot more confident as the week has gone on. I feel very confident today. I'm definitely nervous. It's the NFC Championship Game. Like I said, I think the Eagles are the best team remaining, so I think that we should be, and we are currently the favorites to win the Super Bowl. So anytime that expectation is put on a season and put on a game, really, it's just so massive. And then a game with, so many stakes, like today with the NFC Championship Game and a chance to go back to our second Super Bowl in 3 years. I feel like, obviously everyone wants to win the Super Bowl, and that's the number one goal, and it would be so amazing for the city. But I feel like just getting there is so big. Just having all those stuff leading up to it, the 2 weeks leading up to it, and getting to watch media day and, getting to all get the Super Bowl gear and just have your team be on the stage, and just those whole 2 weeks are something that is so special, along with obviously having your team in the Super Bowl. So I want that back so badly. And I want this game so badly. So definitely nervous from that aspect, but definitely confident in the Eagles in this game. I think we're the better team. I think we match up against them very well in a lot of our strengths. And I'm nervous from the standpoint that it's a big game, but I'm confident that the Eagles will win this game.
We'll be breaking down the whole game in the next hour and a half as we lead up to the 3 o'clock kickoff. Two things that I saw throughout the week that made me feel very good. The Commanders are the 8th team since 2000 to enter a playoff game, having it be their 4th straight road game. The previous 7 teams, 0-7. Along with this, teams after they play the Lions this season are 2-15. Those two things are making me, Eagles 100, Washington 0.
Yeah, I think the road game thing is definitely a big factor. If you look back in years past of teams who have kind of been road warriors to make the Super Bowl, the Giants obviously did it twice. The Green Bay Packers did it as well, but they were only 3 games. Having the 4th game on the road is definitely going to be a big factor. I think coming off of obviously a snow game, sometimes they'll say it's like playing in an overtime game with how much effort it takes, is definitely a thing that's going to be challenging for the Eagles to overcome this week. But I do think that playing in 4 straight road games, the NFL really doesn't ever put this on the schedule. They do a max of 3 straight road games, with the ideal being just 2 to kind of give teams a break. So this is definitely not an ideal scenario for Washington, but it's definitely something that should play in our favor here.
And, don't forget, we're dressing Rocky. Like, when will people learn to not mess with Rocky? Teams that have done this, the Vikings in 18, the Patriots did this in Super Bowl 52, the Giants, the Niners, and now Washington's dressing Rocky. Like, how stupid, unless it's an inside job that it's hilarious, how stupid are people?
Yeah, so the fact that it is their old logo makes me like a little bit hesitant that it's an inside job, because I feel like a lot of their fans have gotten some new gear by now. But at the same time, I don't know. If it is a Washington fan, it is very stupid. They think it's very funny, but it has not proven well for teams in the past. San Francisco, like you said, obviously we all remember the Minnesota Vikings faithful doing the skull chant on top of the Rocky steps. Rocky's not someone. The Rocky statue is not something you mess with. So hopefully we keep the winning streak alive when teams mess with Rocky.
Yeah, and not just so they mess with Rocky there. Oh my goodness, Sam. They took over the Hard Rock Cafe last night.
Oh my God.
Is that not the
Philadelphia staple, Hard Rock Cafe? The fact that they're acting like they went and took over, I don't even know what the equivalent would be of, some famous Philly place, but yeah, it's hilarious. 25 of them went to the Hard Rock last night, and they're acting like they just invaded us. And a lot of people in Philly, the response to that was, I didn't even know they had a Hard Rock Cafe in Philly. It's over there by the Reading Market on Market Street. There's a reason that they allowed a lot of Commanders fans in there, because there probably was not a lot of people there to begin with. So, yeah, I saw a tweet that was very funny today, and it was like the away team Eagles playoff starter pack. Dress Rocky, claim a takeover, get smacked in the game, and then yell about how the fans are really mean. So hopefully we can finish off the last 2 here to Commanders fans. I saw, Tick Pick put out a tweet. Obviously we don't like them, because if you're going to get tickets from anywhere, it needs to be from SeatGeek. And Tick Pick putting out this tweet already shows that they're not the premier ticket website. But they put out a tweet that 20% of their tickets have been sold to fans in the DC or Virginia area. But what I think it needs to be put into a lot of context. A lot of people are saying, oh my God, that's like 15,000 Washington fans. There's probably 2,000 tickets sold on TickPick. So in reality, it's like 200 tickets. It's not really that many. Obviously there will be Washington fans with it being so close. But as a fan base who should know what a takeover looks like in their own stadium, I guarantee you they will not be having one today.
Yeah, we're very used to really taking over FedEx Field. You see more green. I don't think it's called FedEx Field anymore, but whatever the name is, you see a lot more green in Washington a lot of times than you see the burgundy and gold when the Eagles are there. And I think you're still going to see an overwhelming amount of green at Lincoln Financial Field today. Let's flash back to that game in Washington and the game where the Commanders played in Philadelphia. Week 11, the Eagles beat the Commanders 26-18 on Thursday Night Football. Jalen Hurts that night, 18 for 28. Wow, he threw for over 200 yards, 221 passing yards. That's like I think you see as many people in Hard Rock Cafe on a normal Tuesday night as you see amount of times Jalen Hurts is throwing over 200 yards this year. Jayden Daniels that night, 22 for 32, 191 yards, had a touchdown and interception. But the big guy that night was Saquon Barkley. 26 carries, 146 yards, 2 touchdowns. Both of them were home runs to seal the game in the fourth quarter. Looking back at that night, what do you remember and what are your takeaways?
Yeah, so I think a big storyline that was kind of underplayed going into the game and then after the second game and kind of seeing how Jayden Daniels has played the rest of the year, I think a big storyline that was underplayed was his rib injury. He was dealing with that, and we saw, obviously Kelly Stafford has come out and said that Matthew Stafford was dealing with a rib injury, and we know how they can be hurtful for a quarterback, but I think that was kind of an underlying storyline that not a lot of people paid attention to. But in terms of Saquon Barkley, that he was the big reason we won that game, and I think he's going to be a big reason why they win the game today too. If you look at Washington's run defense, they are not very good. I know we'll talk about it a lot later, but I think that's the biggest thing that stands out to me is that Saquon just kind of did what he did every game so far this year, really, with hitting home runs when it matters in that fourth quarter, being able to wear down the opposing team's offensive line. The game was close, obviously, going to the fourth quarter, and then I believe with about 4 minutes left, Saquon hit that game-winning touchdown. So, it definitely was a close game. The Commanders, as we know, as they're here in the NFC Championship game, are a very good team, but I think that this game showed that the Eagles can run the ball on them when Jaylen is healthy, and I feel like it's a little bit of an outlier game for Jayden Daniels just because of his rib injury in that one.
Yeah, week 16, the Commanders walked off the Eagles 36-33 in Washington. But let's remember, Jalen Hurts, he was knocked out of the game in the first quarter. And in that first quarter, the Eagles scored 21 points. It was their hottest start of the year, and it looked like they were ready to dominate Washington, and Washington clinched that NFC East crown. But Jalen Hurts, of course, knocked down the first quarter, kind of halted that. Jayden Daniels had an amazing game, amazing final drive to win the game, 24 for 39, 258 yards. He threw 5 touchdowns, had 2 interceptions. Saquon Barkley had a huge touchdown to start the game, 29 carries, 150 yards, and 2 touchdowns. The Eagles were dominating. Jalen got hurt. Things kind of whirlwind. C.J. Gardner-Johnson got ejected in that game, and Devontae Smith catches that ball on that final drive for the Eagles. They're probably looking at a sweep over Washington this year.
Yeah, I think this game is very much a context game. I think when a lot of people in the national media are talking about this matchup, they just kind of look at the fact that, Washington did beat the Eagles this season, but that is obviously true. But I think context is very much important in this game. You talked about it. Jalen Hurts got knocked out early, and they were up 21-7, I believe, after the first quarter. After that, Saquon obviously had a big touchdown run, but then without the threat of Jalen's legs and really without knowing what Kenny Pickett was going to be, they were able to just kind of hone in on him and stop him a little bit there. And, the defense, they created 5 turnovers in that game, but off the turnovers, the Eagles did not score points. They only had 6 points off of turnovers. So that obviously was a big factor in them losing this game. And then the defense played an uncharacteristic quarter. That fourth quarter, Washington scored 22 points. If it wasn't for that, the Eagles would have won that game. And then obviously they were still, even with all of that, in position to win the game. And Devontae Smith dropped a game-winning catch, which he catches 99 out of 100 times. I feel like this game, I said a little bit, is not an outlier just because Washington obviously is here. They're here in the NFC Championship game. But I think context matters a lot with that. And hopefully the Eagles, is the first quarter of that game, Saquon was running all over that Washington defense. Jalen was moving the ball very well. So hopefully they'll be able to do that again. I think one thing that is big coming from that game, and as we've seen, I know we'll talk about it a little bit later too, but the Commanders defense is looking to hit the quarterback, whether it's going to be a dirty hit, legal hit, safe hit, clean hit, whatever you want to say. They're going to be looking to hit the quarterback. So that's definitely a takeaway from that game. But, Jayden Daniels has been the best quarterback in the fourth quarter in the NFL this year. So it's definitely something to watch out. That's obviously something we saw there. But again, I think context really plays into this game. And the Eagles beat themselves in that game, I feel like, instead of the Washington Commanders actually beating them.
All right, let's look into this game today, coming up in about an hour and 15 minutes here. The Eagles, Commanders, the NFC Championship game. Big news coming out for the Eagles just before we went live. Cam Jurgens is active. He is not on the inactives list, but he is not going to play today for the Eagles, so he is going to dress. He is going to suit up, but he's not going to start at center. He is out, I guess we call him out with a back injury. Landon Dickerson will start at center. He was the center in college. He was a All-American center at Alabama, and now Tyler Steen is moving to left guard in place of Dickerson, who was at left guard, and now Tyler Steen's at left guard. This is a huge loss for the Eagles, their run game, and Jalen Hurts, who we'll really dive into in just a few minutes.
Yeah, it is massive. I think it's interesting that Cam is not ruled out for this game, that he's just going to be on the sidelines. I think it's one of those things. It's the NFC Championship game, and if Tyler Steen's getting destroyed out there, Cam, just go in and do what you can. You said it, Landon Dickerson, a lot of people don't forget this. Landon Dickerson was the original Jason Kelce replacement. He played center at Alabama. He was drafted by the Eagles in the second round. He would have been a first-round pick if he didn't tear his ACL in his senior year of college or junior year, whatever year he came out. And he was the original Jason Kelce replacement. And then Kelce obviously decided to keep on playing, and the Eagles put Landon Dickerson in at that right guard spot, and he's turned into a three-time Pro Bowler now. So obviously it's worked out great for him with the position switch. My only concern really is the snaps. Jalen does not go under center. So Landon Dickerson really needs to be able to have good, consistent snaps, because we know Jalen is going to be playing out of that shotgun. And then Tyler Steen has played pretty decent this year. Tyler Steen was drafted to be the guard. I said Dickerson was the right guard. Dickerson's the left guard. Steen was drafted to be the right guard. And then obviously Mekhi Becton has come in and done such a good job. So having him in there, I still feel pretty confident. It's going to be interesting because obviously Jonathan Allen is back for Washington. He's a very good defensive tackle, but they're also going to be without Deron Payne, their best defensive lineman today. So that would be something to help us out a little bit, I guess you could say. But also with Dickerson, Cam is the one that calls out the protections for the offensive line. So that's going to be something that Dickerson's going to have to do. But I think my biggest worry is going to be those snaps, because Jalen just doesn't play out of under center very much. So hopefully we're going to have some clean shotgun snaps today.
Dickerson took first team reps at center on Thursday without Cam Jurgens. Tyler Steen is with him as well with the first team. So they were able to all practice together. Jurgens was limited on Friday, and I ruled not starting just a few minutes ago. And we'll dive in. Jalen Hurts has been the main talk, it seems like, across the nation recently and this past week, of his struggles throwing the ball and, holding on. He got sacked 7 times, took a horrible safety against the Rams last week, and now he has a knee injury that he suffered last week, which he didn't practice a whole ton. He was limited, and then fully practiced on Friday. Just so many things going on with Jalen. The knee is huge. He relies, of course, on his legs mightily, Jalen Hurts does. And on top of the struggles he's been having, what do you expect from Hurts today? And could this game really come down to Jalen's health with his knee?
Yeah, the knee obviously is a huge factor. And in terms of what I expect today, much of the same. If you expect anything more from the passing game at this point, I think you're just kind of fooling yourself. We've seen it all season long. They've only had one game where they really were an elite passing team, and that was that Pittsburgh game. But every other game, they just have not been able to move the ball through the air as much as we'd like. And whether that's him taking sacks or, offensive line breakdowns or whatever it is, we just haven't been able to do it. And the knee is obviously a huge concern. I think it's very big that he was able to practice as a full participant this week, because that means that he was able to get out there and do all the things on the practice field. But he obviously relies on his legs a ton. And I've said over and over again on this show every single week that my favorite thing about Jalen is his ability to extend drives, especially late in games, with his legs, because I feel like he's so good at doing that, picking up clutch first downs at end of games and in big situations with his legs. And if that is going to be hampered today, then that's obviously a big concern, because they have not been good passing the ball. You talked about how many sacks he took last week. There was just one sack under 3 seconds. There was one at 1.88 seconds, which obviously is not his fault, but I think a lot of it is on him. The offensive line obviously takes a lot of blame for the sack, but I think Jalen just holds onto the ball for way too long. And, there's been so much talk about how we don't need Jalen to really do anything. All he does is win. He doesn't turn the ball over, all that stuff. And all that stuff is true. And it's great that he doesn't turn the ball over, because we've seen these quarterbacks in the playoffs who have lost. They're turning the ball over like crazy. So I don't want to diminish that at all. But he also has been taking so many negative plays in the passing game that it's almost like turnovers at times. He took 2 sacks last week that took them out of field goal range. That's potentially 6 points that they left on the board just because of him taking a sack. They were on the 8-yard line, and he took a safety. 8-yard line and took a safety, which almost cost them the game because it made the game and made them only down 6. Obviously, Jake Elliott was a big part of that, but you cannot take a safety in that situation. And a lot of people want to kill Kellen Moore for that play call. Dallas Goedert was wide open, and he was staring right at him. Just throw the ball. Jalen Hurts holds on to the football longer than any quarterback in the NFL. I feel like I say that every week, but it's true. He takes way too many sacks that he doesn't need to. He doesn't pull the trigger on open receivers, especially early in their routes. He doesn't throw guys open. I've tried very hard to be very positive on Jalen as much as I can when I talk about him in these things, because I don't want to be negative. And I know a lot of people have, they don't like talking bad about the quarterback, especially one who's in the NFC Championship game, but he just has not played well this year, really. I mean, he's played okay, but these last couple games in this postseason and his postseason career outside of the Super Bowl, he just has not played that well. And, I think at this point, it just is what it is. We need, hopefully, Saquon Barkley and, the defense to really come up today, but he's got to be better. He's got to be better. Will he be better? I don't know, but he has to be, because even though they're winning games, I don't think he's played well enough to deserve to win some of these games, just because he has made so many mistakes that, the defense has really picked him up. We saw last week after that safety, immediately they get a fumble recovery, and that was huge. But, man, he's really, really got to start playing better, because this is just, it's the biggest worry for the team, I think.
Yeah, the biggest position being the biggest worry for the team certainly isn't helpful. But, I mean, you mentioned the turnovers, and you look at some of these guys like Justin Herbert, 4 interceptions against Houston. Jordan Love had 3 against the Eagles in the division round. Jared Goff had 3 interceptions, and the Lions had 5 turnovers against Washington on Saturday last week. And, I mean, you look at it, last week, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Hurts had more total yards than all 3 of them, and all 3 of them had 0 turnovers. I mean, you can bash Jalen Hurts for not, for taking the sacks and everything, but ultimately, he's doing enough to win the Eagles a game, and he's not making the big losing plays that a lot of these other quarterbacks have been making this postseason to lose games. Jalen Hurts, obviously, I am finding ways to defend him because I have made myself a Jalen Hurts defender, so now I have to live by it. But he's making plays to win the Eagles games, and he's not making the losing plays. Is he taking sacks? Yes, but he's not taking the losing plays. And ultimately, in January and hopefully in 2 weeks in February, that's really what matters.
Yeah, and I think I don't want to diminish him not turning the ball over at all, because it's massive. Jared Goff turned the ball over 2 times last week, and then obviously Jameson Williams also threw an interception. You look at these quarterbacks who are losing, you said it, they turn the ball over like crazy, and that is the biggest thing that going for Jalen right now, is that he is not turning the ball over. But at the same time, I do think that he is making losing plays. You said he's not making losing plays, but I think he had 3 losing plays last week that the Eagles overcame. Taking those 2 sacks to take you out of field goal range, and then taking a safety from the 8-yard line, in my opinion, is just a losing play. So if you're not going to be throwing for these big yardages, and you're not going to be making plays with your arm, you can't be making these mistakes that he is, and taking all these negative plays in the passing game. The Eagles threw for under 100 net yards with all of his sacks last week. And it's definitely something that, right there, he's staring right at Dallas Goedert. Even just throwing the ball away to live for another down, he's not doing right now. And that's going to be a big thing with his knee, because hopefully it will be, but the concern is that he won't be able to escape, so. And in terms of comparing him to other quarterbacks who are not who are not putting up huge numbers. I think if you look at their numbers this season, both of those guys, Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, have both thrown for, just about 1,000 more yards than Jalen has this year. And they also play with way less talent. Jalen has A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, Saquon Barkley. He has all this talent around him. And yes, they're winning games. But I think, we want Jalen, at least I want Jalen, to be a quarterback that you win because of, not a quarterback that you win with. And I think Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes are both quarterbacks that you win because of. And right now, Jalen Hurts is a quarterback that we're winning with. And it's good enough to win for right now. But I guarantee you, if the Eagles lose one of these next two games and he plays this way, the tide's going to turn, because I think that if we do unfortunately lose one of these games, he's going to be the reason. But, I don't want to be so negative, but I don't like what I'm seeing right now from him. And definitely my biggest concern. But I think, I'll go into your next topic here. I think one of the biggest things that he has been really good at this year, and that's going to be a big thing today, is handling the blitz. That last year, that was our biggest worry coming into the season, was, can Jalen handle the blitz? And he's done a great job of that this season. And Washington's going to test him. They're going to make him beat them. So hopefully he can, with the shifting around on the offensive line, obviously they can still handle that blitz.
Yeah, the Commanders are the fifth highest blitz percentage on dropbacks, which is 31.5%. So, you expect them to try and test Jalen early to see, he's wearing that brace on his left leg to limit his mobility and see what they can do with him. Hurts this season, 8 touchdowns and 1 interception for 955 yards, and has completed 64.4% percentage of his passes when he was blitzed. And, well, you could expect him to be hit pretty hard today. This is what Commanders defensive coordinator Joe Witt Jr. You look up Commanders defensive coordinator, he's not even the first name that comes up. So this guy's really irrelevant. I don't even know why he gets to say these things. But, this is what he had to say about Jalen Hurts earlier this week.
We've had a number of these guys that we've had to prepare for, and so the one thing is if he's going to run the ball, and if the coordinator makes a decision for him to run the ball, we're going to treat him like a running back, and we're going to hit him that way. So that's their decision if they want to get him hit the way that he gets hit. If they don't, they'll keep him in the pocket. So, but that's what we're going to do.
Hey, Joe, you guys.
How's my Joe Witt Jr. impression? Why is the microphone blocking his face? He's that scared to face Philadelphia? He has to have the microphone blocking his face? Like, what is it? What are we doing here?
I don't know. That's, in my opinion, that's a pretty stupid thing to say. Obviously, anytime a quarterback runs, they're going to try to hit him. But, in my opinion, the hit that took out Jalen Hurts in their first game by Frankie Louvu was an illegal hit. It was helmet to helmet. The video clearly shows it. It should have been a flag. It was not, but it should have been. Last week, against Jared Goff on that pick six, it should have been called back because Frankie Louvu, again, put on a helmet to helmet hit on Jared Goff. So there's already been a lot of talk about how the quarterbacks in the NFL are not getting officiated the same as Patrick Mahomes. And then obviously last week, Frankie Louvu, I believe he got fined for that play too. So putting that target on your back of your defensive players is not a good idea. I guarantee you the Eagles sent that to the league and said, hey, watch out for these guys coming at our quarterback. It's just not a good, I just don't think it's a smart thing to do as a coach to put it out there that you're going to try to hit the quarterback. Obviously you are, but I think it just puts a target on your back. And, he's acting like he has Tom Brady back there as his quarterback. Jayden Daniels scrambles a whole hell of a lot as well. So you think the Eagles aren't going to try to hit him as hard as they can too, So I think it was just not a very wise thing to say from the rookie defensive coordinator. And I really hope that we get the benefit of some calls because of it.
Yeah, and I think Jayden Daniels is feeling after hearing that, because now it's like, all right, now you say that. I think the Eagles are striking back and doing the same thing. So, not the smartest thing to say. But going back to Jalen Hurts, he has a chance today to change the narrative of himself and this Eagles offense. If he can go out there and not, take as many sacks and try and turn around things that he's been struggling with and everything. And how is Jalen Hurts able to change his narrative today? And if he's able to go out there and do it, will this Eagles team be like unstoppable?
Yeah, I think if Jaylen can go out there and change the narrative about him today, I think everyone would think that the Eagles are going to win the Super Bowl. I think we know what the greatness of Jalen Hurts looks like from a passing standpoint. We saw it against Pittsburgh. We saw it in the Super Bowl. We saw it so many times in 2022, but we just haven't seen it really since then. So I think what he needs to do is throw guys open at times. We all don't want him to turn the ball over. We all love that he doesn't turn the ball over, but I said this last week, and I'll say it again this week. Sometimes you just got to take a shot. He took a shot last week to Devontae Smith. The ball was underthrown, and he almost got Devontae Smith killed. But I like that he took the shot. He took a shot to A.J. Brown. It was a perfect throw to A.J. Brown. The ball was wet. He dropped it. I loved how he was taking those shots last week. They were calculated shots. They were both ones where they could have been caught. Again, I think a better throw leading Devontae more down the field. He's able to catch that and go with it. A.J. Brown, obviously, that ball was a freaking dime, so that's all on him. But I like how Jalen was able to do that last week at times. So I think he needs to continue to do that again. Again, calculated shots, but take some shots. And also just pull the trigger. Just pull the trigger. We've seen it so many times with screenshots going around Twitter. The one you showed on the set on the safety there of guys over the middle of the field, wide open. Just take the easy pass sometimes. That's all we're really asking. Just take the easy pass. These guys are great at run after the catch. Dallas Goedert, we all know, is amazing run after the catch guys. We saw against the Green Bay Packers when he punched that guy in the face a couple times. So just take what's there, and I think if Jalen can come out and have a big game today, I mean, everyone will be on board for them winning the Super Bowl, and I think they win this game pretty handily. But I think that that's what he has to do if he wants to change the narrative around how he's been playing so far this year and this playoff.
Well, I'm tired of hearing, Josh Allen being praised of just doing enough and not caring about his self-accolades, but doing enough to win the Bills a playoff game like he did last week. You hear on ESPN, he didn't throw for over 200 yards, but he made the winning plays to win the Bills the game. But Jalen Hurts, it's like the same argument, but twisted into negative. And I am tired of hearing that from anybody.
Yeah, I think a big reason why that is just because the Eagles have a lot more talent than these other quarterbacks do. And I think when you look at Josh Allen, you have seen so many times this year him put on the Superman cape and him going for 4 touchdowns or 5 touchdowns and throwing the ball all over the field. And, he's got just about 30 passing touchdowns and just about 4,000 yards passing. So I think everyone knows how good of a quarterback Josh Allen is. I don't think a lot of people really know what Jalen Hurts is because they've always seen him with a stacked team. He hasn't played well this year, really, for the most part, up to his 2022 standard or even up to like a Josh Allen standard. So I think a big part of it is just in the national media and from a national fan standpoint, they've seen what Josh Allen has done all year of putting on that Superman cape and really carrying a Bills team that traded away their best receiver in the offseason. And he, taking a step back in a game, he can still do what needs to be done to win. Where on the other hand, they don't think that Jalen's the reason that this team wins the game. And, I kind of agree with that. Saquon Barkley is an MVP candidate. This defense is ranked number 1 in the league. We got great weapons on the outside. So I think that's the big reason why the national narrative is different between the two players.
Well, let's see if Jalen can change that narrative. And God forbid the Eagles lose this game and Jalen Hurts plays horribly.
Yeah.
Could we see something at quarterback different in 2025 regular season?
No, not next year. But I do think that the narrative, I think the fan base is pretty split on Jalen, and I think half the fan base thinks that he's a middle of the pack quarterback, and half the fan base thinks that he's the best thing ever. And he always gets a lot of praise and kind of just defense when I don't think it's always warranted defense. I think everyone kind of blames everything on everyone else except for him. But I think that if in one of these next 2 games, he's the reason why we lose, and he doesn't play well today, and we lose next week, or he plays bad again today and we lose, I think that the tide will turn, because I think a lot of people will kind of come back to reality of just not just taking a step back and actually seeing what Jaylen has put on the field this year, and especially in these playoffs, and just kind of taking the blinders off a little bit, I think, because the biggest thing that people who want to defend Jaylen is they say is, well, he wins. He's a winner. All he does is win games. Well, that ends when you lose. And if he's the reason that you lose, then he's a winner, goes right out the door. And, you can't use that as, if you ask somebody what the best trait of Jalen Hurts is, their response is he's a winner. Well, if he's the reason that they lose and they don't win the Super Bowl, then you can't take that, you can't keep saying that. So I think that if, something obviously drastic were to happen where he doesn't play well again and the Eagles do unfortunately not win the Super Bowl, I think that that when that excuse is coming out and say, okay, what does he really do well? Well, he doesn't pass the ball very well. He holds onto the ball too much. Obviously he's a good runner, but his flaws will definitely come to the surface a little bit more than people want to see at the moment.
All right, let's move on. Let's look at the.
Yeah, let's move on.
No more negative talk. No more negative talk. We got an NFC Championship game that we need to hopefully be celebrating about tonight, and let's look at what Jalen Hurts will be going up against. And this is the Commanders' defense. I'm going to break it down. They are the 30th ranked rush defense, and they're going up against the best rushing attack in the NFL. Okay, they also allowed 521 yards and 31 points to the Lions while forcing 5 turnovers.
Yeah,
they allowed 521 yards, 31 points while allowing 5 turnovers. Their secondary, it's all right, but A.J. Brown owns Marshawn Lattimore, and the Commanders will not have their defensive tackle and their best defensive lineman, Darren Payne, today, who is out with knee and finger injuries.
Yeah.
This to me is looking like a golden opportunity for some a good offensive game for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, the good news for the Eagles is that Jalen Hurts can probably play the exact same way that he has these first 2 playoff games, and I still think they win the game because Saquon Barkley, I think, is going to have another big game. Like you said, they are the 30th ranked rush defense. Jahmyr Gibbs had a really good game against them last week, and they were able to pick off Jared Goff last week. But I think, as we've seen in Jared Goff's career, when he throws interceptions, he throws them in bunches, and he definitely was throwing them in bunches the other day. And like you said, they still put up 521 yards and 31 points off of those 5 turnovers. So the thing that I think won Washington the game last week is that their offense was able to capitalize off those turnovers. But yeah, their rush defense really struggles. Their best defensive tackle, you mentioned it, Daron Payne, is going to be out for this game. So that will obviously play into our strengths, and it's going to have to be a big Saquon game again. And I think he's going to have another game. I'm not so confident in the Eagles receivers. Obviously, I've just went on this long talk about Jalen. If I had to ask you, I wrote this down. I wanted to ask you, if you don't know, how many yards do A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith have receiving this playoff combined?
Well, A.J. Brown is like 40, maybe. Devontae, is it over 100?
It's 100.
Oh, look at that.
2 games, 2 elite wide receivers, 100 total yards. So, I don't know how much that's really going to change today. I do like the matchup, obviously, with A.J. Brown and then obviously Devontae Smith going up against them. I always like those matchups with them against just about everybody, but we'll see how the passing game does today. Obviously, 100 yards combined by the 2 of them in 2 games is not very good. A.J. has 24 in the playoffs so far, so not great. But lucky for us, like we talked about, the Commanders' rush defense is very bad, and Saquon Barkley has ran for 4 touchdowns, 296 yards against them in the 2 games this season. And I think we're just going to ride him to the Super Bowl. I honestly do. I think he's playing like the best player in the NFL so far this season. He should be the MVP of the league, in my opinion. And he's just on a special run right now. And he's a guy that the way he's playing right now, he can take us and win us the Super Bowl. And I don't think he's going to stop anytime soon.
Yeah, he is a special football player. 2 home run touchdowns last week to beat the Rams, including that 70-plus yarder in the snow, which was just such a beautiful touchdown to watch. But, we see A.J. Brown against Washington since he became a Philadelphia Eagle. He just kind of is unbelievable against Washington. I don't know what it is, but this guy, he hates Washington and he hates the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I don't know why he is. I don't know why he doesn't. I guess he just doesn't like the color yellow. But you look at in last time with Kenny Pickett out there, he forced like 3 pass interference calls on Marshawn Lattimore. Two of them are back to back. Could Jaylen maybe try and make something happen with A.J. Brown? And could A.J. Brown kind of get that inner excellence and turn it into outer excellence today?
Yeah, Marshawn Lattimore obviously is a really good corner, and they really almost traded for him for this exact matchup. When they traded for him, they were hoping that he was going to go up against number 1 wide receivers in the playoffs, and here we go. He's got a second-team all-pro wide receiver to go up against right now. So it's definitely going to be a good matchup. The pass interference thing last week, or the last time they played, was pretty crazy on how many AJ was forcing. I mean, that was just pretty insane. So I don't know if it's going to be that big today, but if the Commanders like to play man, and I think that they're going to, kind of man up on the outside here, and that plays right into the Eagles' strength. Jaylen and AJ, both against zone, they have really bad numbers, and both the teams that we played the first 2 playoff games do both play zone defense, while the Washington Commanders love to play man-to-man on the outside. So I think that is really going to play to our advantage if we can take advantage of it, because as we know, just about no one can cover A.J. Brown one-on-one.
Yeah, he is always open. All right, Jayden, let's talk about this. Let's switch it over. Eagles defense against Jayden Daniels and the Washington offense. The Eagles have the league's top-ranked scoring and total defense, including the playoffs entering conference championship week teams, with the number 1 in both scoring and total defense entering conference championship game at home are 4-0 in the last 20 seasons. So that's that I like to read. Now, Jayden Daniels, he's probably having maybe the best season from a rookie quarterback in NFL history. You've never seen a rookie quarterback play in the Super Bowl. Jayden Daniels tries to break that today against the Eagles. You're never going to stop him. How do you slow him down? Obviously, third down and red zone, he has been at his best, maybe one of, if not the best third down and red zone quarterback in the NFL. And how can Jalen Carter, who saved the Eagles season last week, and this Eagles defensive front slow him down?
Yeah, Jayden Daniels has really just kind of burst onto the scene as a star and a future star quarterback of this league. It's not very often that you see quarterbacks and rookie quarterbacks kind of change a franchise as quickly as he has. Last year he was the number 2 overall pick, so that means Washington was the second worst team in the league, and he has them playing in the NFC Championship today. So it's pretty crazy, the turnaround that he's kind of taken them on, and obviously a coaching change and also a unfortunate owner change, as I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit later. But I think the biggest way to slow him down, because I think you're right, you're never going to really stop him, is just to kind of use that kind of mush rush and just kind of not keep him in the pocket, because obviously he can slice and dice you from the pocket, but keep contained. I think the biggest thing that we saw last time the Eagles played him that was worrisome was that sometimes the Eagles pass rushers were getting past him, and then that opened up lanes for him to run. I think of a Jalen Carter play where he got past him and he was able to slip right by him for a first down. In particular, he's not one of these guys where if you shut him down running the ball, then he's kind of done for, because he can pass it just as good as he can run it. But I think just being able to kill his timely scrambles and get him down behind the line of scrimmage and get sacks on him. The Washington Commanders have had 19 possessions this postseason. They've punted once and they've scored on 11 of them. So their offense is humming at just about as good as it can right now. Dan Quinn loves to go for it on 4th down, so it's going to be 4-down territory for them just about all over the field. But I think the biggest thing for him is going to be to just kind of shut down the guys on the outside. One thing that's interesting, and I think no one's really talking about, is that with all the injuries the Lions had, and then going back to their game against Tampa, they're 2 of the worst pass defenses in the league. So obviously that sets up very well for Washington to really take advantage of, but we're the number 1 pass defense in the league. So hopefully we can shut the wide receivers down first and then get him down behind the line of scrimmage today.
Here is pregame at Lincoln Financial Field. They've taken the field, and Jalen Hurts taking warm-up snaps with Landon Dickerson, not Cam Jurgens. So this was just a few minutes ago. You see Jurgens running around there, but it's Dickerson who is taking snaps with the first team. There's Cam Jurgens right there with Kenny Pickett. Maybe taking some snaps, could go in the game if needed, but it looks like right now Landon Dickerson will start at center for the Eagles. So that's your update from Lincoln Financial Field. That video is from the great E-Rock on Twitter, E-Rock_Eagles. All right. Let's another thing that's not going to help Jayden Daniels today, which hasn't really been talked about. We haven't really spoke about that much on the show, but no Sam Cosmi for Washington today. So they're without their best defensive lineman, and now they're without their best offensive lineman. The pressure rate allowed by the Commanders with Sam Cosmi on the field last week against Detroit was 17.6%. When Cosmi left the game in Detroit, the Lions' pressure rate was 45%. This is huge for Washington.
Yeah, it's a huge loss. He's their best offensive lineman by far, and he's at their most premium position on the line as well, because he would have lined up right against the Eagles' best defensive player in Jalen Carter, and we saw how Jalen Carter can wreck a game last week against a pretty decent Rams offensive line. So Jalen Carter is definitely going to be getting double teamed a lot today, but it might not matter because Trent Scott stinks, in my opinion. You know, he's a guy who was a tackle, and then they're moving him inside the guard. He has really bad pressure rate numbers. Obviously, he showed the 45%, but he grades out as a terrible pass protector. There was talk about moving their starting tackle, Andrew Wiley, inside just because of how bad Trent Scott played. So they're obviously not going to do that. But if they're even thinking about that, then that just shows you that they're worried about Jalen Carter going up against him. So Jalen Carter really has to take advantage of that matchup. And if you're going to rush a scrambling quarterback from anywhere, you need the pressure to be up the middle because it moves him into your guys on the outside. We saw last week Nolan Smith was able to get a strip sack on Matthew Stafford because Jalen Carter pushed him into him. So that's going to be huge for the Eagles to take advantage of today. I mean, Jalen Carter, holy moly, he is playing just out of his mind. You know, you asked me a few weeks ago if he was better than Fletcher Cox already, and I said I wasn't ready to go there, but good Lord, I think I'm ready to go there now. He is playing the best thing I've ever seen an Eagles defensive lineman play in my lifetime at the current moment. Obviously, we look back at Hassan. He's giving me a lot of the Hassan Reddick Super Bowl year vibes where he was just wrecking games. We all know what Hassan Reddick did in the NFC Championship Game 2 years ago, with knocking two quarterbacks out of the game. So I don't know if Jalen Carter is going to do that, but my Lord, Jalen Carter, you know, he saved the game last week. The Rams had a potential touchdown wide open, and he was able to sack Matthew Stafford and then obviously forced the throw out of bounds. So it's going to be a big test for Trent Scott today with no Cosmi, and I think that's going to be a big thing to look at for the Eagles defensive tackles. You know, not just Jalen Carter. You know, Moro Ojomo got a sack last week. We all know how well Milton Williams has played. So it's a big spot for the Eagles to take advantage of.
Yeah, I mean, not just did he save the game, he saved the Eagles' season last week, and all season Jalen Carter has been unbelievable. Like, I don't have any other words to describe how Jalen Carter is playing other than just unbelievable. And I've said it so many times this year, he's a monster. He's ginormous and he's disruptive. To me, that classifies as a monster.
Yeah, I think if you were to look back at the season and, you know, before the season started, everyone was kind of saying, you know, the Eagles may be like a middle of the pack team just based off we don't know how the defense is going to be, all that kind of thing, maybe 11 wins. But what could take them to that next level? And I think the answer from everybody was if Jalen Carter turned into a game wrecker, and he has absolutely turned into a game wrecker. You know, if you look back and you talked about the number one defense, you look back at some of these teams that win Super Bowls with quarterbacks who aren't playing as well as maybe they could have, or just, you know, sometimes some younger quarterbacks or whatever, they always have that elite defense to lean back on. If you look back at the Broncos Super Bowl when they won with Peyton Manning, when he was just basically done. They just rode that defense to the Super Bowl. You look back at the Seahawks, their first Super Bowl with Russell Wilson when he was still really young. They rode, obviously, that Legion of Boom to the Super Bowl. So that's definitely something that can happen in the past that teams have done, and I think it's something that we can do as well because this defense is playing fantastic right now, and hopefully they can keep it going today.
Quinyon Mitchell is back. He injured, what was it, his shoulder? I don't remember the exact
Yeah,
injury.
shoulder, arms, around there, yeah.
Yeah, so in the first half against the Rams last week, he said earlier this week he's playing. He can move that arm. His arm is functional. All you need is a pen. If you can write, you can. You can play in the NFC Championship game. So he's going to play today, and well, he just like owns. Like you ask Terry McLaurin who your father is, and he says Quinyon Mitchell. Like it is ridiculous. First time they ever played each other, 0 receptions, 0 yards on I think 1 target when Terry McLaurin matched up against Quinyon Mitchell. Was pretty similar a few weeks later in Washington, and now we get it for the 3rd time in the playoffs. Scary Terry. How about Scary Q?
Yeah, so Scary Terry did get Quinyon Mitchell for a touchdown last game. But besides that, Quinyon has done a great job defending him. And it's big because that's who he lines up against. Scary Terry loves to be on that side of the field, and they're going to be going up against each other all day long. Quinyon, it's a big moment for him. A rookie starting in an NFC Championship game going up against a receiver as good as Terry McLaurin is definitely going to be a big matchup for him. But I think the biggest thing for Quinyon today is just know where your help is at and don't let them beat you over the top. We saw obviously he got his first career interception in the Packers game, but I think one of the things that's been underrated about Quinyon this year is his speed. He's done a great job of not allowing teams to throw over him. The one time that team did, fortunately, was Scary Terry that last game against Washington. But I think if Quinyon can kind of keep McLaurin in front of him, he can have a good day. And it's pretty funny, I think I told this story a little while during the first Washington game because I wasn't on the pregame show during the second one. But I actually met Terry McLaurin during the offseason, and I asked him about Jayden Daniels, and he told me that this dude is a baller, and that a lot of people are about to find out, about Jayden Daniels. And obviously here we are. So he was pretty right about that. So it's pretty funny to look back on that conversation I had with him over the summer about how he was kind of telling me that Jayden Daniels was going to turn around the future of the Washington Commanders, and now here we are where he has done just that. So just a funny thing to look back on, and hopefully this is as far as they go.
All right, I want to show you this video. This is from the parking lot. This person's got a shopping cart, and we're barbecuing hogs in the parking lot.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
I think that's a whole pig.
That's hilarious.
So if you wanna,
I never understood the Commanders. Obviously their former name and the pig thing. I never got the correlation there, but that's very funny, clever.
I just learned.
Part is hilarious.
Yeah, I just learned like HTTC is hail to the Commanders. How stupid!
Yeah.
How stupid is that? Like that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Very stupid.
And I saw like they did these interviews. They were like I don't know where they were with these Commanders people and the Washington News, and it's just like these people are so corny. It was like buy Eagles buy, like HTTC. Like come on, we can't come up with anything better. Like I don't know.
Well, I don't know if you remember when they first changed their name. When they first changed their name, there was that guy who did the rap. And it was like, we are Commanders. Bump, 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 bump. At the end of it was so bad.
Yeah, they're pretty brutal. Something else that is kind of brutal that came out this week involves Darius Slay, and he's preparing for Sunday to be his final home game at Lincoln Financial Field. This is per Ashlyn Sullivan of NBC Sports Philadelphia. Slay told her, I don't know if you saw this, Darius Slay got a tattoo of himself this week on his leg.
No, so it's an old tattoo. It's him and Kobe Bryant. And he got it after Kobe passed. It was just AJ was only showing the part where it was a picture of himself to like make fun of him. But the actual tattoo is a picture of him and Kobe, and he got it after Kobe passed away.
You couldn't
it's actually 5 years to the day of today. So
yeah, I did see that. That was pretty. I can't believe it's been 5 years. But I mean, like, still a tattoo of yourself. Just get a tattoo of Kobe. Like I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. It does. The tattoo himself does look just like Odell Beckham Jr. As AJ Brown pointed out, which is pretty funny. Anyway, Slay told Ashton Sullivan this week after having conversations with his family, he is 85% leaning towards playing one more season, but understands it is most likely not going to be with the Eagles. When she asked him about the emotion of playing his last home game this weekend, he said he isn't allowing himself to get caught up in the future. Slay confirms he will definitely not play more than 13 seasons in the NFL, which means he has 1 year left, and looks forward to watching Eagles games from a box, not in the snow, in the near future. Darius Slay's been a great Eagle for the last, 4 or 5 years already. And
Yeah.
if this is his last game at the Link, kind of sad.
Yeah, so real quick before I talk about Slay, so the reason with the Hogs and the Commanders,
Okay.
so their Scott's name is Major Tuddy. He's a pig. And the reason that he's a pig is because in the 1980s, when they were winning those Super Bowls, their offensive line was nicknamed the Hogs. So they made their mascot a pig.
Who was calling them the Hogs? That's like the worst.
Yeah, I don't know. Very weird. But yeah, so I did not know that. So we learned something new about the Commanders today. But yeah, in terms of Slay, obviously he has been a very good Eagle. I think he's been very underrated, I think, since coming over here. I think a lot of people love to hate on him just because of the nature of the cornerback position of, I think it's at times, he obviously goes out in the media and he'll protect himself and, put the blame on other people, which I don't like about him. But I think in terms of just a player on the field, he's been just about everything you can ask for a cornerback one. I mean, getting him for a third-round pick, what a steal by Howie Roseman a few years ago. He's obviously had a lot of time left. And, it's something definitely that we kind of saw coming when the Eagles took a cornerback in the first round. They don't normally do that. And obviously they've hit on Quinyon Mitchell, so they feel confident enough to move him over to that cornerback one slot. So obviously in the offseason, it'll be interesting to see who will be that cornerback number 2. But for now, hopefully we can send Slay out as the last home game as another NFC champion, as a Super Bowl champion here. But I'm definitely grateful for Darius Slay if this is his last games with the Eagles. And his play is not going to be it's going to be hard to replace. And I mean, he's still playing at a great level. He's still playing really well. So it's sad that it's probably going to be his last game or two here, but I'm definitely grateful that we had him here.
Yeah, Slay kind of seems like a guy that has kind of at this point is flown under the radar. He's not getting the big interceptions and big numbers as he usually is getting, but he's playing at a very high level, and he's kind of been in and out this year as well with some injuries. So. It's he's been great. I don't love what he does with the media and going on Michael Parsons' podcast isn't the greatest thing in the world, but great player on the field, which is really what matters in the end of the day. So, and a great leader apparently in the club, in the locker room as well. So
yeah, he's been a captain, so the guys obviously love him. He ever since day one. This is something that we don't always see from veterans when their replacement is drafted in the first round. A lot of guys don't really they don't like that. They don't like being shown essentially being shown the door. They don't like the writing on the wall, and they kind of don't like taking other guys under their wing. But I think it shows Darius Slay's character from day one. He took Quinyon Mitchell under his wing, and if you ask Q about Darius Slay, he will say about how much of a great mentor he's been. And we saw these videos in practice and of a training camp, of Darius Slay kind of just showing Quinyon the ropes. And then when they had the Magic guy there earlier in the season, and Darius Slay was kind of pushing Quinyon up to go up on stage. And I think that just shows what kind of guy Darius Slay is. A lot of guys aren't able to do that, aren't willing to do that. Carson Wentz, we all know, was not. Aaron Rodgers, another example. So I think it's definitely big of Darius Slay, and I think it's going to be really big for Quinyon in the future to have learned under Slay this whole year.
All right, we are about a half hour away from kickoff from Lincoln Financial Field of the 2025 NFC Championship Game, and it is time for our normal segments. Our notable matchups is what we'll start with. What are your notable matchups for this NFC title matchup?
Yeah, so both my notable matchups are both ones that we talked about so far today, but I'm going with them just because I do think that they are two of the biggest matchups that could decide this game. Jalen Carter versus Trent Scott is a massive, massive, massive thing to watch in this game. Jalen Carter, we talked about it, but my Lord, he was the biggest reason that the Eagles kind of took advantage and won that game at the end there. So to have Jalen Carter going up against a backup is just going to be so massive. And if he can win that matchup and be a game wrecker, it's going to be huge. And then I think also Jalen Carter gets double teamed a whole lot, and they're not going to want to leave him one-on-one with Trent Scott. So it's going to create opportunities for these guys on the outside to eat. We saw Nolan Smith again get another sack. So hopefully he can do that again today. It'll let these guys on the outside be able to take advantage of their matchups. So, it's the biggest matchup of the game, in my opinion. And then my second one, another one we already talked about. I don't want to be repetitive here, but again, like I'm saying, I think it's the biggest matchups of the game. So I got to go with them. And it's Quinyon Mitchell versus Terry McLaurin. To have a guy on the outside as your number 2 cornerback as good as Quinyon Mitchell is definitely such a luxury for the Eagles. If Quinyon Mitchell can shut down Terry McLaurin, I think Washington's going to have a hard time moving the ball in this game, because that means that Brown is going to be against Darius Slay, and we all like that matchup, even though he played very well in the postseason. We all like that matchup. And then, Brian Robinson Jr. has had a tendency to put the ball on the ground against the Eagles. So I think, the biggest 2 matchups are Jalen Carter and Trent Scott, and then Quinyon Mitchell versus Terry, because if the Eagles win both those matchups, I think we have a very good shot of winning this game.
My notable matchup, let's go with some coaches. Vic Fangio and Cliff Kingsbury. It's the two elements of both teams that define them, the Eagles defense and the Commanders offense. Cliff Kingsbury and Vic Fangio, both in their first years. Cliff Kingsbury could be getting a head coaching job. We'll see what goes with that. Vic Fangio, he's going to be Eagles defensive coordinator maybe until he retires. So we'll see how that goes. But that's my big thing. How will they play off of each other for both coordinators today?
Yeah, it's going to be a huge thing to watch. Like you said, Vic has done obviously such a great job, but I think, obviously so is Cliff. Anytime you get to this point, every coach on that staff has done a pretty damn good job. So it's definitely a big matchup to watch. And, I think Vic is going to be a little bit unhappy about how obviously Washington moved the ball on them last time. So I think he's going to have some new schemes. I think last time, Jayden Daniels is so good against the blitz. He's like a veteran against the blitz already, and the Eagles blitzed a whole lot against him last time. So I think they're going to change that up today. I don't think they're going to do it as much. Obviously they're going to do it some, because Vic likes to have those timely blitzes with Vaughn. But I think that's going to be something that we could see adjusted today, is maybe a lot less blitz from the Eagles defense.
Something else to watch out for today. If you remember last time, C.J. Gardner-Johnson got ejected.
Yeah.
Against Washington. Jalen Carter got a unnecessary roughness against him where he kind of smacked some dude in the face. And then Zach Ertz and Nick Sirianni went at it after the game. So you could see, I don't want to use some brain rot face, but some rage baiting from Washington today against the Eagles offense, or against the Eagles defense. Jalen Carter has kind of a short fuse, as we very well know. C.J. Gardner-Johnson knows how to talk back at some guys. They get ejected for talking crap last time after getting punched in the face. Yes, and that was kind of ridiculous, but I think it's the same ref as well. So something to keep your eye on.
Yeah, anytime 2 division rivals are going to meet up in that game with this much on the line, it's going to get chippy. Washington's definitely not scared of us. They celebrated after beating us like it was the Super Bowl. The hiccups. Like it was the Super Bowl. So I think we just got to keep a level head. They are the underdogs. They're the team that has nothing to lose. We're the team that came into this season and this playoffs expecting to win the Super Bowl. They are just a good story who is here now, and obviously they all expect to win the Super Bowl now, but they also have that kind of house money mentality. So they're going to be out here just trying to do everything that they can to win this game. And the Eagles got to keep a level head. You can't let them get under your skin.
How many times have we heard a team coming into Philadelphia playing under house money in the past 3 years? I don't like hearing that at all. Anyway, let's move into our SeatGeek standout stars. SeatGeek, we all know they're the easiest and most efficient way to buy your tickets. We were looking at tickets for this game. I think this morning we were looking and didn't really come down, and we've used this. We have obviously used SeatGeek before, but if you've never used SeatGeek before on your first purchase, you can save $20 off. Code Philly Sports Report. Philly Sports Report. You will save $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. Again, Philly Sports Report. They've sponsored this show for the past 3 years. Of all 3 years we've been doing it, they have been the proud sponsors. So we appreciate SeatGeek for sponsoring the show and this segment of the SeatGeek Standout Stars. Sam, what are your triple S SeatGeek Standout Star?
Yeah, I'm going to go boring. I'm going to go with old reliable. But in a game with this magnitude, you got to rely on your best players. And I think if I had to choose one person to be a standout star on the offensive side of the ball and one player to be a standout star on the defensive side of the ball, it's got to be Saquon Barkley and Jaylen Carter. They have gotten you to this point. And with the matchups that they have today, I think they're going to have another huge game. You know, we talked about it a lot about how Washington has a really poor rushing defense. So I think Saquon Barkley is going to have another big game. And then obviously Jaylen Carter going up against a backup offensive lineman. So I think he's going to have another really big game. You know, I think an honorable mention for this game would, from me, you know, I was debating on whether to put Jaylen Carter or Zach Bond. You know, I think Bond, because of the play of Jaylen Carter, Bond's play in the playoffs has kind of gone underrated, in my opinion. You know, as underrated as a first-team All-Pro linebacker can be, but he has been fantastic so far in the playoffs. And I think he's going to be a big force in terms of stopping Jayden Daniels because he does have that speed. I think he's going to be a little bit of a spy on Jayden Daniels today just to keep him from kind of running rampant on us. And, you know, he's been so good so far this season, you know, first-team All-Pro and all that. So I think he's somebody else who could have a big game today.
Yeah, the NFL honors nominations came out this week, and Saquon Barkley, MVP and Offensive Player of the Year. Zach Bond, Defensive Player of the Year. Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, both Defensive Rookie of the Year. And then Vic Fangio for Assistant Coach of the Year. I don't know how many of those the Eagles are going to win. I would love to see Saquon as Offensive Player. He's not going to get MVP, unfortunately. Maybe Vic Fangio for Assistant Coach of the Year. I don't know how much of Quinyon and Coop for Defensive Rookie, and this is Bond, but those are all off-season acquisitions. They are on first year as a Philadelphia Eagle, and they're all up for NFL honors. Take a bow, Howie Roseman.
Yeah, you know, Howie just sometimes has these off seasons where he just hits on just about everything. And it's so crazy because his biggest signing of the off season didn't play a single snap last week. And he's still, no one even talks about it because of how good all of his other off-season additions have been. You know, you look back to 2017, bringing some of these guys in. Obviously, they won the Super Bowl 2022, lost in the Super Bowl, having that great off-season, and he has just hit the ball out of the park this season. You know, hopefully it leads to another Super Bowl championship, but even if not, I think Howie Roseman has done everything in his power to put this team in position to win a Super Bowl, and that's all you can really ask for. And for the fact that all those guys could be up for those awards, and none of them were here last year, is just ridiculous. And, you know, we're so lucky to have Howie Roseman as our general manager.
We sure are. Our Gamblers RS locks of the game. Thank you to SeatGeek. Our Gamblers RS locks of the game. Gamblers RS, listen on wherever you find your podcast and on the Philly Sports YouTube. Eagles started at -5.5, moved up to -6. The over-under 47.5. What are your locks today?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting. You know, this game got up to Eagles -6.5, and then it just comes down to 6 right before game time. I like the Eagles. I do. I think that the Eagles are going to win this game, obviously, and I do like the Eagles just barely with the points. I like the over in this game as well. I think Washington is going to kind of score a late touchdown or late, you know, whatever, some late points to put it over. Saquon, 2 touchdowns. He had 2 touchdowns last week, had 2 touchdowns against Washington. The second time, had 2 touchdowns against Washington. The first time, I think Saquon Barkley has a touchdown to send us to the Super Bowl today, and I think he has another one early in the game as well. Jayden Daniels, over half an interception. The Eagles have picked him off multiple times throughout this season when they played him. I think they get another one today. And then Jalen Hurts, over 29.5 rushing yards. You know, Jalen Hurts' rushing numbers are definitely down this week, projected just because of that knee injury. I think the Eagles are going to come out early in this game and run Jalen just to kind of prove to Washington that he is okay. So I think that he could get over 29.5 pretty early, but with the number being lower than it normally is, I'm going to try to take advantage of that.
All right. Our Foco fit check. Foco, real fans, they need the best gear. That's why Foco makes legendary gear for the most legendary fans. Link in the description of the bio. Save 10% off any in-stock item after the game if the Eagles win. When the Eagles win, Foco is dropping a ton of Eagles NFC Champion Super Bowl 59 stuff. So make sure to go check that out right after the game. For me, I am going with the same thing I've worn the last 2 weeks, and ever since I got this, the Eagles have not lost a game. The Kelly Green, Saquon Barkley, I'm riding high. Wore it against Green Bay, wore it against the Rams. Now we wear it against Washington.
Yeah, so we are twinning today. I also am wearing the Kelly Green Saquon Barkley jersey. You know, I obviously wear a different jersey every game, but I went with this one today just because I think, like I said, I think we're going to ride Saquon Barkley to a Super Bowl championship. You know, he's gotten us this far. He had such a good game last week, and I think he's going to have another big game today. I felt like this moment called for the Saquon jersey. If we have the Eagles in the Super Bowl in 2 weeks, I have a special jersey for that planned out. You know, hopefully, knock on wood, we will get there. But for today, I had to go with the MVP of this Eagles team, Saquon Barkley.
All right, let's move on to our keys of the game. Oh, by the way, our good friend David Bergner, who was on with us for, I think, the Carolina game, he was featured in the Philadelphia Inquirer this week for how many jerseys he has. I said, like, he could have a different hat and jersey combo for every day for the next 164 years. That is absolutely insane. So, David Bergner, you're the man if you're watching. All right, what are your keys?
All right, so my 2 keys to the game today. Number 1, we talked about it a lot, but winning the turnover battle. Jalen Hurts and the Eagles offense has done a great job at holding on to the football, and the Eagles defense has done a great job at turning the football over. 6 turnovers so far in these playoff games, but Washington also has forced 6 turnovers so far on their road to the NFC Championship game. I think whoever wins the turnover battle today will win this game. And then my second one is going to be keep starting hot. I never thought I would say that the way the season has gone so many times in the beginning of the season. You know, everyone's talking about how the Eagles could not score on their first drive in the first quarter. Always tough games at halftime. The Eagles need to keep starting hot. You know, the last game, obviously, they came out 7-0, bam, against Green Bay. I believe they also scored on their opening possession. They did because of the turnover. So they scored on their 2 opening possessions. Get out early, get the crowd going, get the crowd getting into it, and let's just keep this momentum going all game long. So, yeah, those are going to be my 2 keys to winning this game today.
My key to the game is Washington has come in the regular season was the second highest scoring first quarter team. They put over 100 points in the first quarter in the regular season.
109, yeah.
109. So if you can limit them in the first quarter, try and shut them down, and as you said, go with Sam's key and start hot. You know, that if you're able to do that, and then of course limit them in the fourth quarter as well, because we know how good Jayden Daniels is in the fourth quarter. I think the Eagles will be looking good in the NFC Championship game. All right, let's get to our predictions. You can read all of our staff's predictions on PhillySportSports.com. The Commanders, I'm going to read exactly what I wrote because I actually do like what I wrote. But Commanders coming into this game red hot. Daniels, greatest rookie season ever, and everything's going their way. But I think this game's going to come down to one thing. Whichever team can slow down the opposition superstar is going to win this game. Jayden Daniels for Washington, Saquon Barkley for the Eagles. I think the Eagles' defense, the best defense in the NFL, is much better suited to shut down Jayden Daniels than the Washington's 30th ranked rush defense is to shut down Saquon Barkley. That's why I'm going with the Eagles to be punching their ticket to New Orleans. It's going to be a close one. Eagles 31, Washington 28. If the Eagles are better suited to shut down their Washington superstar, which means they're going to their second Super Bowl in the last 3 years.
Yeah, I like it. You know, my prediction, I think that this game is going to be tight early. I think Washington is going to come out and they're going to be ready to play. I think that this could be like a 14-10 game at halftime, that kind of thing. But I think the Eagles are going to come out in the second half and do what they do. I think Saquon Barkley is going to take over in the second half of this football game. And, I started out this week very nervous about playing Washington just because they're so hot. We see so many times in sports that the hot team can just kind of ride that wave all the way through the playoffs. But when you actually take a look at the past 2 games and then take a look at these rosters, in my opinion, Washington has the better quarterback, but I like our positions everywhere else. I think that every other position group, we have the advantage. And I think we have, 2 of the 3 best players in this game. So ultimately, I think that is what's going to win out. I think that Washington will get a little bit of a score late, but I think that the Eagles are going to be punching their ticket also to New Orleans tonight. I have the Eagles winning this game 31-24.
Now we just got to hope that the NFC Champion t-shirts are not ugly like they have been. I think last year they were really, really gross, but hopefully they're nicer this year so we can get some. That's going to do it for us on the Eagles pregame show brought to you by SeatGeek for the NFC Championship Game. We hope to be talking to you in 2 weeks. Not hope, we will be talking to you in 2 weeks. That show will start a little earlier than an hour and a half before kickoff. We'll get the time to you sometime over the next 2 weeks. But we want to thank SeatGeek for sponsoring the show, Foco as well for sponsoring the Foco Fit Deck. Check out PhillySportsSports.com. And throughout the next 2 weeks for Eagles Super Bowl coverage, follow us on social media for tweets throughout the game and everything else that's going on with that. We're going to end it with how we started it, the Eagles hype video. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Goodbye!
The path to the Super Bowl is through Philly. We clawed, we scratched, and we fought to get here. We pushed through the pain and the pressure for this moment, for this hour.
Stafford's got to have it. His throw is incomplete, not close. Philadelphia to the championship game.
And now, the hunt continues.
Jalen Hurts, touchdown!
Now is when we reach deep inside and unlock what should not be unleashed.
15, 10, goodbye! Another one!
This is where we become the beast, the threat, the terror.
He's hit! They've got him!
This is who we are. This is why we're here. This is how